Delmonicos is unquestionably one of the best steakhouses in New York City and one of the country's most historic restaurants. I've been to Delmonicos before and loved it, but an incredible deal brought me back to the restaurant where I feasted on a massive steak and top-notch food. I also noted a number of changes at the establishment, but nevertheless, my meal was one to remember.
Today I'm here in Lower Manhattan of New York City, and I'm very excited because later this evening I'm gonna go to a restaurant where I had one of the best meals of all last year. I am talking about the legendary fine dining restaurant slash steakhouse of Delmonicos. It's been almost a full year since I last ate at the restaurant, and subsequently it's been a year since the restaurant reopened after its prolonged closure from the pandemic. Now, I would have loved to have gone back in the meantime, but for me, I love variety. I love taking advantage of the vast diversity of restaurants available to me in New York City. But thankfully today, I actually have an excuse to go back to Delmonicos because they are a participant in Restaurant Week. For those that don't know, Restaurant Week happens twice here in New York City. It occurs during the sort of downtimes for restaurants when they're trying to bring in customers. As a result, these restaurants will offer set menus with a fixed price meant to lure in customers in search of a bargain. There are in fact many steakhouses participating in Restaurant Week, but like I said earlier in the year when I went to Club A Steakhouse for Restaurant Week, the problem with going to a steakhouse is that they can't really offer a lot of their premium cuts for the Restaurant Week menu. It's understandable, right? You're not getting a big porterhouse for a $60 fixed price. Subsequently, most of these steakhouse Restaurant Week menus seem like they offer the exact same menu. You know, like a Caesar salad starter, a steak and frites entree, and a New York cheesecake for dessert. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want a big damn piece of meat, and I will certainly pay a little more for that. Delmonicos offers just that with some supplements on their menu. And these are fantastic supplements, like their signature Delmonico steak and a 22-ounce bone-in ribeye, which I think I'm gonna get this evening. In fact, I think Delmonicos may just have the very best Restaurant Week deal in New York City. To sum it up, I am very excited to be going to Delmonicos again. I hardly ate anything today. I've been looking at my watch all day, just counting down the seconds until my dinner. Oh, I can't wait. But now I think it's finally time for me to start heading towards the restaurant. Let's go to Delmonicos.
Located in the financial district, Delmonicos has nearly 200 years of history. The restaurant was established back in 1837 by the Delmonico brothers. Numerous dishes have been created at Delmonicos, while the establishment has served a wealth of noteworthy and historical figures. I've always appreciated the look of the building Delmonicos is housed in. It's just so iconic. In fact, it's similar to the building used for exterior shots of the Continental Hotel in the John Wick franchise, which is actually located about a block away at 82 Beaver Street. When I walked past the building on my way to Delmonicos, there were quite a few John Wick fans taking pictures of the structure, but I couldn't dawdle. I had a 5 o'clock dinner reservation, and I was soon seated at Delmonicos. Right off the bat, I noticed a pretty apparent change. The lighting was dimmed. During my first visit, the restaurant was fairly well lit. Now, because of the dimmed lighting, it had a more elegant and romantic feel. Although I was perfectly fine with how Delmonicos was lit during my first dinner, as I do tend to favor a well-lit space. After settling in, I began exploring the menu. I really appreciated the diversity of offerings from the restaurant. Delmonicos definitely goes beyond the typical steakhouse selections. I also noticed some changes on the menu compared to my first visit. There were some new courses and some dishes taken off the menu. Plus, there were items that have changed in their makeup, like the side of hash browns that I had on my first visit and the cheesecake as well. Now, I would have loved to have tried the updated versions of those courses, but I had other plans. I was at Delmonicos for their Restaurant Week menu, so I took a look at the selection. It's a 3-course dinner for $60 with a few supplements offered. While I knew that I was going to get a supplemental steak, the standard offering sounded great as well. In fact, the couple seated next to me ordered the steak frites, and it looked pretty damn good. Yeah, Delmonicos follows the typical steakhouse Restaurant Week trend of offering a Caesar salad, steak frites, and a cheesecake, but their selection seems way better. In terms of beverages, Delmonicos has an extensive wine list. My only regret for my visit to the restaurant last year was that I didn't get any wine. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. I I ordered a glass of the 2020 Protos 27 Tempranillo by Bodegas Protos. It was definitely a pleasant, well-balanced wine with a satisfying long finish. Now, there's nothing wrong with having just water and a steak, but having a nice wine to pair with the meat really can take the experience to another level. Also at this time, I was given a bread basket, which I found to be different from the one that I had the previous year. Inside the basket, it contained 2 varieties of bread. One of them even had olives in it, which I really enjoyed, but both of them were nice and fresh and a pleasure to eat. Besides the bread, the butter was also different, but it was still delicious and very smooth. Overall, it was a solid bread basket, but I limited myself to just 2 pieces since I had a massive steak coming my way. But first, I was presented with the appetizer. I went with the main crab cake with potato strings and a tarragon dill tartar sauce. Visually, it's not your average crab cake, but it looked like something new and interesting. Simply put, I was very excited to try it, and I wasn't disappointed. That crab cake was absolutely spectacular. The lump Maine crab meat was perfectly cooked, but the textural contrast with the crispy potato strings was fantastic. I also loved the addition of the tarragon and how it interacted with the tartar sauce. Overall, that was hands down the best crab cake that I've ever had. To me, the dish is the perfect representation of Delmonicos. It's a steakhouse classic, but one that's been modernized. Delmonicos is a restaurant that respects the past, but at the same time is innovating for the future. I couldn't have been more happy with that crab cake. It was practically perfect. But soon enough, I was presented with my main reason for coming to Delmonicos, the steak. I paid a $29 supplemental charge on the Restaurant Week menu for the 22-ounce dry-aged bone-in ribeye. Right away, I was told to cut through the middle and check on the steak's temperature. A small flashlight was even shined on the meat to assist me. The steak was indeed cooked to a perfect medium rare. I couldn't wait to dig in. My first bite was one of pure joy. The steak was just the way I like it. The dry-aged flavor was remarkable. Before my dinner at the restaurant, I was wondering if the steak would just be a larger, bone-in version of their famous Delmonico ribeye. However, comparing the 2 steaks is like comparing apples and oranges. For one thing, the Delmonico ribeye is wet-aged and as a result was far more tender than the dry-aged bone-in ribeye. However, the bone-in ribeye was still pretty tender, but it had a far more intense and rich flavor as a result of the dry aging compared to the Delmonico cut. Plus, the 2 steaks come from different producers, with the bone-in ribeye sourced from Dakota Ranch in South Dakota, while the signature Delmonico ribeye comes from Brandt Family Farms in California. Comparing the 2 steaks, I'm struggling deciding if I actually prefer one over the other. They're both fantastic in their own ways. Texturally, the Delmonico ribeye is superior, but the bone-in ribeye had the funky, dry-aged flavor that I love. Simply put, both steaks are incredible, and you can't go wrong ordering either of them. I also just love the fact that Delmonico's not only offers a good variety of steak cuts, but meat prepared in different ways, from dry aging to wet aging. They really have a great selection of steak. Plus, they even added an A5 Japanese Wagyu strip loin to their menu since my last visit. However, with a $150 price tag for 3.5 ounces, I doubt that I'll be trying that one anytime soon. Now, during my first visit, I felt like my steak would have been a touch better with some finishing salt. Funny enough, I was given salt and pepper grinders without even asking for them, which was interesting since I didn't see any other table receive them. However, I felt that my ribeye was perfectly seasoned. Plus, it had so much dry-aged flavor that it really didn't need any help from additional seasoning. Nevertheless, since I was given them, I thought that I should at least try a bit. The salt was nice and flaky, and of course it complemented the meat well, but it really didn't need it. Also, and just like on my last visit, I was given a cup of the Delmonico sauce. As I said before, I mostly prefer my steaks without additional sauces or components, but I still wanted to at least give it a try. It was very good. In fact, it could have actually been different from the sauce that I had on my first visit, but I'm not sure on that one. Nevertheless, I pretty much kept the sauce to the side as the steak was great just as it was. Alongside my steak, I also got to enjoy a side of the cream spinach, which was top tier. The texture was on point, it had a great body to it as it maintained the perfect balance of not being too dense or too watery. Flavor-wise, it delivered as well as it was simply delicious. Although I feel like that could have been a reduced portion size compared to what the side would have been like had I ordered it off the a la carte menu. However, I was perfectly fine with the portion since the a la carte sides are usually pretty large and are mostly meant for sharing. As a whole, I think that might just be one of the best examples of cream spinach that I've ever had. Overall, I was loving my dinner. I also have to mention how fantastic the service was. In fact, Grace, who served me last time, was my server once again. She was incredible. While I go to restaurants first and foremost for the food, having great service really can make a difference. After finishing my steak and scraping off the last bits of meat on the bone, it was time for dessert. I went with the chocolate layer cake with Kessie's fudge and malted milk ice cream. It was certainly an appetizing looking treat, and it even had an elegant touch of gold leaf. I was very excited to try the cake, and it didn't disappoint. The dish was practically perfect. It was just so chocolatey and rich. Texture-wise, the cake was spot on. It was very moist, plus it was obvious that the dessert was fresh. I also really loved the bit of salt on top of the cake as it provided a nice contrast to the sweetness. The malted milk ice cream was a joy to eat as well as it had great flavor. Of course, the ice cream paired perfectly with the cake. Overall, the dessert may have been on the simpler side, but it was executed to perfection. To sum it up, I couldn't have been more happy with my experience at Delmonico's. Everything that I had was delicious. Plus, that restaurant week menu was spectacular value. For instance, the 22-ounce dry-aged bone-in ribeye that I ordered would normally cost $86 off the regular a la carte menu. For restaurant week, it was $60 plus a $29 supplemental charge, which brought the total to $89. With that price, I also got an appetizer, a small side dish, and a dessert for a mere $3 more. With restaurant week, it can be a sort of gamble at times, with restaurants reducing portion sizes or even taking away aspects of a dish. In fact, the very next week, I ordered off a restaurant week menu and one of the dishes was missing a foot. Stay tuned for that review. After finishing my cake, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $125.68, but with my tip, I spent about $151, which was well worth it.
Once again, I was treated to another amazing meal at Delmonico's. That was fantastic. That ribeye may have just been the best steak that I've had all year, but it's a close call because I really enjoyed my steak at La Cuckoo, but that was much smaller, and yeah, I like eating a lot. And I definitely ate a lot. That restaurant week deal was incredible value. In fact, that had to be the best restaurant week deal that I've ever gotten to experience. And I've been to a lot of restaurants during restaurant week in both New York and Chicago, and Delmonico's really stood out among them. Now, compared to my experience at Delmonico's last year, it's hard to top my first time, but this was almost as good. Delmonico's is without a doubt one of the best steakhouses in New York. I think it might actually be my favorite steakhouse, but I think it's still a close call between Delmonico's and Keen's, but the reality is they're very different restaurants. I also appreciated that the restaurant did change in certain aspects. It's nice to see a restaurant not just rest on their laurels. One thing that didn't change, however, was the quality of the food and the service. It was so nice to have my same server from last time. Grace is just exceptional. All around, Delmonico's is such an iconic and legendary New York City establishment, and I can't wait till I get another excuse to go back to that restaurant because I love it.